welcome to our session on taking the power to make change happen. And hello, my name's Helen Bevan, and I work with a team called the Horizons team, which is part of NHS England and NHS Improvement, and we support large-scale change. So what we're going to talk about is about power. And actually, very often as change agents, it's not something we talk about, or we don't like to talk about it. But the reality is if we're going to make big change happen in our communities, in our systems, in our organisations, in our teams, then we have to work with power. And Bertrand Russell describes power as the ability to produce intended effects. And again, when you think about the changes that so many of us want to make, we need the power to be able to do that. Can everybody mute at the moment? Because I can hear a little bit of background noise. So if everybody who's got the ability to mute and unmute can mute, that's fabulous. So you can just see here. So I'm Helen Bevan. This is my Twitter handle at Helen Bevan, and we're going to be tweeting today collectively. So our hashtag we're using is at hashtag collaborative and hashtag collaborative NW. So encourage you all to tweet, and we'll see what's happening on Twitter. So here's our agenda between now and 11:45. We're just going to have some introductions, just getting a sense of what today's about. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to put you into some small groups, into breakout rooms. And what we're going to do during the course of the morning is you're going to be in that breakout room 3 times with the same people. So we're going to get you to say hello to your new team members at 10 o'clock. And then the main session, which is the kind of masterclass part of the session, which is content rich, which just means me talking quite a lot, is up until 10:50. And some of the things we're going to talk about are about old and new power, how we make change happen using both, creating investors, not buyers in change, building shared purpose, and we're going to look at a particular model for change. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick break for 10 minutes, have a cup of tea, and then we're going to come back at 11 o'clock. And we've got our colleagues here from Warrington Together, Carol and Rachel, and they're going to share a case study with us around working in virtual ways. And we're going to use the ideas from the first half of the session to give them some ideas for the second half. And then finally, we're going to reflect and close. So what I think we should do next is we should have the welcome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Steve, who is going to formally welcome us. So hi, Steve. Would you like to welcome all our 130 participants?
I certainly would, Helen. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and it's brilliant to see you all. It seems such a long time since we had our last event, and I'm really looking forward to today. And it's great to have, as Helen says, over 130 of you online. MIAA, and on behalf of the North West Masterclass Collaborative, MIAA, AQuA, North West Academy, ADASS,
Steve,
hello?
You're sounding a little bit like a Dalek. So why don't you turn your camera off and we'll probably just get a slightly better sound quality, if that's okay, just temporarily.
Turn
at the bottom where it says stop video. It'll probably be open.
So, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Great. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah.
All right. So on behalf of North West Masterclass Collaborative, delighted to welcome you all, and particularly for Helen, Chief Operating Officer for NHS Horizons, who's going to lead this first virtual session. I'm sure Helen won't mind me saying that she's been leading on large-scale change for a number of years now, and she's been widely acknowledged globally for her expertise and ability to translate change into practical action to deliver outcomes. So, on behalf of everybody, Helen, thank you for being with us today, even albeit virtually. I guess, we're still witnessing across the world unprecedented events that have been caused by COVID. And whilst the NHS and social care system has responded with innovations that have made a real difference, today is going to provide a great opportunity for us to reflect on those recent events and ways of working so that we can sustain that change and really deliver improvements. A number of you will have been with us in Manchester last year when we had the Jeremy Hines session, and he shared his thinking on new power. And today's event is going to build on that work so we can understand sort of currency of old power and new power within change and how we can sort of better integrate things. To do this, Helen's going to take us through the latest thinking on new power, how it can be harnessed effectively through social movements, and then we'll move into action through practicing this for ourselves with a case study. So without further ado, over to you, Helen.
Yeah, and Steve, you sounded fantastic when you turned your camera off. And that was a really lovely welcome. So thank you so much. So let's go back. Just to say that during this session, we're going to have a case study, and Rachel and Carol are going to be joining us later on in the session, because with sessions like this, it's very easy to give you a bit of some interesting change theory and models and frameworks, but the thing about that is it's hypothetical, it's theoretical. We want to get practical. Every one of us who's on this call today, I think, is passionate about enabling change to happen. So we want this to be real. So just to tell you about what we're going to be looking at a bit later on, is our case study from Carol and from Rachel is going to be about new ways of working, and two projects that they're working on. So across Warrington, so big projects. The first is around virtual working integrated care teams, and the second is about virtual multidisciplinary teams. So just to say, what we'll be doing is we'll be applying the ideas that we're looking at now to this big Warrington project later on in the session. So let's just bear that in mind. So just a few things around finding your way around Zoom, because I know a lot of people here today are more experienced around Microsoft Teams than you are on Zoom. The reason we're using Zoom is because it enables 132 of us to see each other, which is great, and also it enables us to use breakout rooms, so we can go into into smaller settings. So for those of you that don't know Zoom very well, okay, most of you have found the chat button. But if you haven't found the chat button, if you go along the bottom, okay, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little icon that has got chat. So click on that, and then what I want you to do is to write in there anything you want to put in the chat box. Send it to everyone, because we'd like you to share your ideas and your questions and your perspectives with everyone. But you can have a private conversation. But just bear in mind that I will get a printout of your private conversation afterwards. Not that I'll say anything, but if you want to say hello to certain individuals, that's great. Okay, everybody needs to manage their own microphone and camera. So if you're not speaking, will you mute yourself? And again, you can see the mute button on your panel. And as Steve has just demonstrated beautifully, you can start and stop your video. Okay. If you want to raise your hand, okay, click on the participants, which is just along from the mute and the stop video, and then you can raise your hand. If you raise your hand, your electronic hand, remember to lower it too. And the other thing you can do is that we've got a facility on this version of Zoom for closed captioning, for subtitles. So for anyone that is deaf or hard of hearing, or would just like subtitles anyway, if you press on closed caption, you will get subtitles. So just a little bit of etiquette, okay? what we want you to do is, unless you're a speaker, we'd like you to be muted. So if you can just stay muted. Having your camera on in the main room is optional. You know, it's up to you. But we're going to be using the chat box as the main method of communication. Okay. If you've got a technical problem, please raise your virtual hand. And again, the way you do it is click on participants and then click on raise hands. Okay. When you're in the breakout room, okay, which we're going into shortly, you mute and unmute yourself. So again, if you can keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. And in terms of having your camera on, because you're going to be in a small group with some other people, it's really good to have your camera on. And if you raise your hand in the breakout room, it won't be for technical reasons. It'll be because you want to vote, or you want to, you want people to see you, or you want to speak. Okay, so that's the etiquette. Okay, and hopefully everybody can stick with that. So I think at this point we should move everybody to breakout rooms. So just check with Paul and Belle. Are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to give everyone the instructions first. So what will happen shortly is on your screen a little icon will appear with the name of a breakout room, and there's a little blue box that says join. So we just want you to join then. What we'd like you to do is to introduce yourself to the other people in your group. Okay, there'll be somewhere between 4 and 8 people in your group. Okay, and so unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and you've only got 10 minutes. So we'd like you to say hello to everybody, but you have a challenge in this first breakout room, which is to find something that everyone has in common. Okay, so what unites you? Okay, what do you share? And what I want you to do is be ready to come back into the main room after 10 minutes. And we'll give you some time warning. So we won't just like 1 minute it'll be in full stream and the next minute we'll pluck you back into the main room. Okay. So, you've got 10 minutes to come to meet all the other people that are going to be in your group for the whole morning, and to find out what unites us. Okay. And what we want you to do is to identify somebody who will type, when we get back into the main room, who will type in what unites us. Okay. Don't type your comments in the breakout chat room because they'll get lost. Okay, so only type them when you come back into the main room here. And the other thing is, you will stay in the same room throughout the session. So try and remember what your room number is. Okay, so when you get put in a room number now and you see your room number, like write it on your book or something. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. So Belle, would you like to move everybody into their breakout rooms? Fantastic. So welcome back everybody. I hope you had some good conversations. And what we'd like you to do now is to put in the chat box what unites us. So if there's one person from every group, and if more than one person from the group does it, it doesn't matter. What we asked you to do was to find out, in terms of the diverse group of people in your session, and what unites us. So if you could pop that into your into the chat box now, that would be fantastic. And if I can just say to our chat box monitors, if you can be having a quick look and see if you can summarise what we're seeing, then that would be fantastic. And while we're just doing that, I'm just going to introduce you to our team today. What I'm going to do shortly is I'm going to call on our chat box facilitators, who are Pam, Sue, Vicky and Julie, to tell us what we're seeing in terms of shared purpose shortly. Eve and Alana are working on Twitter, and again we're going to hear from them shortly. And we've heard from Steve, who introduced the session at the beginning, and we're going to hear from Helen, who's going to introduce things at the end. And our technical hosts supporting things today are Paul, Annabelle, and Claire. So these are the people that you will see in the background and who are contributing today. So let's just hear from our chat box facilitators. What are we seeing in the chat box in terms of our shared purpose? What are some of the things that unite us?
There's wine. There's
wine,
food.
That's fine. Yeah.
There's the outdoors that people are coming up with. People have had holidays cancelled. The impact of COVID, isn't it? That's maybe driven us to the wine, the food, and the outdoors, and working from home, having holidays cancelled. COVID. Maybe that's it. Impact and what it's meant to us in our lives.
Yeah, probably find we have so much more in common, don't we? When we're quite limited in what we can do and can't do.
Yeah. Sounds like we all had a good chat though. Lovely meeting in breakout room 15.
Yeah. Great, and let's carry on doing this. And this is why we're using Zoom and not Teams, because it enables us to have these kind of very, very rich conversations. So let's get going on the content then of the session. So when I was asked to do this session, it was specifically in the context of a model of thinking about change, which is old power versus new power. And I know some of you took part in a previous session around change using this model. And what I was asked to do was, could I take these ideas a step further and think about how we can apply them practically? This is one of my favorite models actually for thinking about change. And what it basically says is, if we want to, make change happen in the world, we need to think about how we use power to make change happen, to get the results, the outcomes we want. So we need to contrast and use old power and new power. So old power is like a currency. It's like money. A few people have got a lot and most of us haven't. And it's formal authority in organizations and systems. So held by a few people. And it's, the formal leadership of the system, and it is pushed down. And we get commanded to do things. You've got to do that because it's the stroke pathway, or you've got to do that because we've got to hit the financial control target, or you've got to do that because it's the it's the performance target. And the thing about old power is it's closed, which means that if I'm a senior leader in, say, an NHS trust, and I'm working a provider organisation, and I'm working with leaders of my local community, I can't command those community leaders to do anything. In a sense, my authority is inside my organisation. And old power is largely transactional. It's about structures and processes and systems and accountability and governance mechanisms. Let's contrast that with new power. New power is a current, it's a source of energy that when many people come together with a shared purpose, understanding what are the things that unite us, okay? We can build a lot of power for change. So it's made by many people coming together that want the same thing. And we can pull it into our organizations and systems. And new power is shared, it's open. Anybody that has got the same values as us or wants the same outcomes can be in our new power movement or campaign. And the thing about new power, the critical thing about it, is it's based on relationships. One of the big differences between old power and new power is that people will engage with new power because they want to, because it fits with who they are in the world and the things that they want. Whereas people engage in old power ways because it's my job, it's the formal system, it's what I have to do, it's what I'm accountable for. Now, I want to talk in a minute what's happening in a COVID world around old power and new power, because things are definitely shifting. We're seeing a lot of old power behaviours, command and control. This has got to happen. Gold command. But what we're increasingly seeing is an awful lot of new power and relational opportunities. And what I'd say is that we're living in a world, and all of us that are change agents, you know, we have to be able to live with and operate with both systems. So there's lots of leaders I know who work predominantly in old power ways. But, you know, history tells us, the evidence tells us, you cannot make large-scale transformational change happen through old power, through imposition, because if people don't internalize the change and believe it in their hearts, we can't sustain it. On the other hand, if we're trying to work with communities, with social movements, with campaigns in new power ways, unless we can engage the old power system, okay, very often it's not going to happen. And I know so many people, you know, amazing clinical entrepreneurs, amazing, you know, community entrepreneurs who've got brilliant ideas that could change people's lives, but because they don't navigate the old power system effectively, they go nowhere. So in a sense, you know, I talk about the zigzaggy place in the middle. Okay, we need to be able to work with both kinds of systems. So let's think about old power, new power, and our COVID world. So, you know, what I'd say about it is, one of the things that I'm seeing at so many levels in COVID response is about the power of relationships, you know, new power, united by purpose. Okay, sometimes, you know, people think that crisis leadership is about command and control, old power, but actually, if you look, all the studies, all the evidence about effective crisis leadership says it's relational. And I just put a quote here on the on the right hand side. You know, crisis leadership means an inclusive leadership approach where each person understands how they can contribute and that their contribution is recognized. That means giving deeper meaning to even the most menial tasks. Okay, and again, haven't we seen, you know, with interest in our COVID world, how people that do jobs like cleaning and portering that are often the hidden heroes, okay, the people, you know, who make an immense contribution but often are silent, okay, how much more to the fore those jobs have come. Okay, when we work virtually, you know, some of you in the group said, you know, what unites us, we're working from home. Okay, virtual working needs to be highly relational. And again, looking at this quote here on the bottom left hand side, okay, what's the evidence tell us? Virtual teammates are 2.5 times more likely to perceive mistrust, broken commitments and bad decision making with distant colleagues than those who are co-located. And they report, people who work virtually, it takes 5 to 10 times longer to get their concerns addressed. So, you know, it's about trust, it's about relationships, okay, absolutely critical. And then when we think about the community response, it has to be relational. And I took this quote here from Samir Arabi, okay? You know, when we think about pathways towards a better world, okay, and lots of people are talking about this, you know, resetting, reimagination, recovery, you know, all these words about our future beyond the pandemic phase of COVID. And Samir Arabi says, many pathways towards a better world are being laid bare by the altruistic mutual aid efforts arising in cities around the globe and towns. Okay, these locally designed and collaboratively built acts of solidarity, which view the vulnerable as participants in their survival rather than passive consumers of assistance, inform a model of community resilience and collective empowerment with implications beyond their immediate effect. So, you know, so new power is critical in our COVID world. And it's interesting to think about this in terms of metaphors. And, you know, a metaphor is when you compare two things, saying that one thing is the other thing. Okay, so many of the metaphors that we're seeing and that we're actually using are old power metaphors. And, you know, we talk about the war against COVID, the fight, the battle. And a lot of our metaphors have got like criminal underpinnings, you know, lockdown, curfew, social isolation, and people that don't obey the rules, you know, the transgressors. And we talk about doctors and nurses as being superheroes. You know, we talk about troops in battle. We talk about front line. We talk about battening down. And again, you know, all these metaphors are about a world of command and control, top-down leadership, you know, heroic leaders, that individuals that, you know, battling the odds. And again, let's think about this in terms of our new power metaphors, okay? And we think about our COVID response as a journey with challenges and a hopeful destination. We talk about positive human actions, you know, with shared purpose, building, forging, reconstructing, many people working together, each playing their part. You know, we're going to talk about this word in a moment, interdependence. You know, interdependence means that each of us individually has got our own role and our own goals and things that we're passionate about. But interdependence means we understand that in terms of what we want to achieve, that we are dependent on others as well. We can't do this on our own. Okay, so again, a really strong sense of interdependence coming through, and creating resilience, connected communities. And when we think about the future and where we want things to, you know, where we want things to go, and all the conversations I'm involved in around how we want the future to be different, okay, 80% of the conversation is a new power conversation. Okay? So actually, it makes me feel very hopeful. And you know, let's go back to thinking, you know, old power, new power. You know, what we're seeing across the globe, people are questioning this old power model of system change. And again, you know, if we link this back to our case study around new ways of virtual working in Warrington that Rachel and Carol are going to tell us about shortly, you know, the classic old power way that we would do something like that is to say, we're going to have pilot projects in certain localities or in certain primary care practices, and then we'll try it with like 4 practices, and the you know the teams that work around those practices, or or we'll try it in 1 or 2 localities. And then we'll see what works, and then we'll roll it out to a few more localities, and then we'll roll it out to all the others. And the reality is, again, we see it across the globe, actually, this almost mechanistic, logical, old power model of making change happen isn't very successful. And actually, what the evidence shows us is that, you know, what we need to do is what happens is that often, if you're the pilot project, it's very beneficial and good because you're getting a lot of attention and resource. But actually, being able to roll out from a pilot to a whole system is a very difficult thing to do. And I just like this quote from John Atkinson. He says, if we opened our eyes, we would see the wonderful irony. Trying to manage human change through pilot and rollout has actually grown something, a proliferation of project managers. And yet, though, you know, those of us that work in the health and care system, you know, very often this is the predominant model of how we do projects. And you know what I'd say is, on its own, it's not enough. So let's think about this. If we're going to make change happen and we want to work in new power relational ways, okay, who are the people that are going to make the change happen? Okay, is it these people here on what I'm calling here list A? So again, if we think about our Warrington Together, our Cross Warrington project, you know, who would be the people in Warrington who are going to make the change happen? Is it the delivery board, that are overseeing Warrington Together, the programme sponsors, the chief execs of all the organisations in Warrington Together? Is it the programme management office? Is it the 17 work streams of our delivery board? Okay, is it the clinical directors of the PCNs? Is it the people that have got the change roles? Or is it the people on list B? You know, the mavericks and rebels and people that think differently, the people that are the positive deviants. And a positive deviant is somebody who thinks differently, but a deviant doesn't have to be a bad thing. A deviant can be a good thing as well. You know, the non-conformists who are like, you know, looking at the world through different eyes and seeing things that maybe people on the list A wouldn't see. And then the hyper-connected people who spread behaviours, model at a scale, set mountains on fire and multiply anything they can get their hands on because they're internal influencers. Okay, and the reality is it needs both, okay? To make big change happen, we need to work with and through the people on list A, and we need to work with and through the people on list B. And when I look across the country and at integrated care systems, okay, an awful lot of places are over focused on list A and under focused on list B, and we need both. And the evidence on this is really clear. And I took this from David Dinwoody, but there's many other people I could have taken this from. Actually, if you look at why most large-scale change projects fail, and I would call, the project that Rachel and Carol are sharing with us today, it's a large-scale change project because in a sense, we want to move to this new way of working for the whole of Warrington, for the whole population of Warrington, okay? So, why might it fail? Well, the failure of large-scale projects is rarely due to the fact that we didn't get the content right, or we didn't get the structure of the plans right, or we didn't get the work streams right, okay? It's much more about the role of informal networks in the organisations and systems and communities that are impacted by the change. And if we want to change a whole system, okay, then we've got to connect networks of people who want to contribute. So I'm not saying we don't have to do planning or we don't need to have really good focus and content. Absolutely, we do. But in terms of where it goes wrong, it's much more likely to go wrong because we haven't connected in with the right people. Okay, this is from Leandro Herrera, who writes about viral change. And he says, people who are highly connected have got twice as much power to influence change as people with hierarchical power. And very often, we think, oh, I can't make change happen. I'm only a middle manager, or I'm working for this social enterprise and I can't, I can't influence the formal system. Wrong. All of us can, but we need to think about how we work with informal influence to influence the formal system as well as the formal system. And again, what we see time and time again is the power of informal influence. And if we're going to work in new power ways, we need to understand who the people are that are the informal influencers. And what we see across organisations and systems is typically there are about 3% of people who influence what 85% of the other people are doing. So they're driving conversations with 85% of the other people. So we need to be able to find these people. And why are they important? Well, because again, just going on from what I was saying before, if you look at why change fails, okay, very often it's poor dialogue with the informal organisation. So again, thinking to Carol and Rachel's project that we're going to be talking about shortly, and Warrington Together, a major reason why it might go wrong, okay, is we are not in dialogue with the informal system as much as we are with the formal system. So we need to find who our influencers are. And these 3% of people, okay, they've got the relationships and networks, they've got the content and the context, because they're people that are highly influential, highly trusted, well regarded in the system. And they're driving the perceptions of other people, and then they're the go-to people for advice. And they make sense of things and reduce ambiguity for other people. And I can almost guarantee that in Warrington, when Carol and Rachel and their colleagues are putting out in the system, we're going to move to the, virtual integrated care teams, people who are going to be impacted by this change, they will be going to their informal influencers and saying, what does this mean? Okay, what does this mean for me? Is this a good idea? And where you've got the informal influencers that are championing what you want to do, it's so great, because it really helps to push change forward. If you've got a situation where your informal influencers, your 3%, are saying, I don't think this is a good idea, or it's all right for some people but not for everybody, and they can't just come and do this to us, okay? Where you've got that happening, it is bad news, and it's difficult, because typically these informal influencers are trusted by their peers more than formal influencers are trusted. And often the formal leaders in the system don't know who these people are, okay? It's also true for social media. If we look globally at health and healthcare and who's tweeting, 85% of the content that is getting retweeted is tweeted by a really small number of influencers. Again, a 3%, 85% ratio. Now, it's interesting because some people are 3% informal influencers inside organizations and systems, and they're hardly on social media at all. Okay, so you can be a 3% influencer inside your organization and system because of your face-to-face or virtual relationships with people, or you can be a 3% influencer with a social media crowd, okay, because you're an influencer on social media. And some people are both, an organizational system influencer and a social media influencer, and some people are just one or the other. But again, you know, just thinking about this in terms of what's happening in COVID, you know, here are 3 very big influencers, 3%ers. And, you know, in a time of ambiguity and uncertainty, like what's happening at the moment in COVID, these people are even more important and even more influential. So I just picked 3 to show you here. So the first one is Dave Morgan, and he is a paramedic with North East Ambulance Service. And he's massively influential in his own organisation and also to other people in ambulance services across the country. And if Dave says something or tweets something or puts an idea across, you know, 200 people have seen it in a click of your fingers. Trish Greenhalgh has been really influential on social media during COVID, and her number of followers has gone up 3 times. And you know, she was one of the people really early on was campaigning for face masks and you know, mask protection. And I think she's there's no doubt just how influential she has been as a new power super influencer. And the third is a palliative care doctor called Rachel Clark, and at Dr. Oxford. And again, Rachel's got a huge following, and you know, she brings thousands of people with her. So when Rachel campaigns for something through her social influence, okay, people in the formal system look up and take notice. So how do you find your super connectors, okay, in your system? Easy. Well, you can do it an easy way or a complex way. Okay, so the complex way is you bring in an organisation that does this kind of clever analysis and they'll do it for you. Or you can just ask other people. And I think you only have to ask about 10 people and you'll work out who they are. And the questions are, whose advice do you trust and respect? Who do you go for information when you've got concerns at work? Okay, what you do when you get the full slide deck, and actually you can do this through the SlideShare version as well. You can just tap on there and you can get all these resources if you want to look at it some more. So what does that mean for me as a change agent? Well, I can seek to be a super connector. So if I want to be more influential as a change agent, okay, so first of all, build connections and relationships. So really be putting a lot of effort and energy into relationships with other people. And what makes you a super connector is other people trust you, okay? And other people give you respect. So, you know, as change agents, we need to be modeling that behavior, okay? So we need to be a model of trust and positive behaviors, you know, not a grumpy person who is, you know, negative all the time, slagging other people off. You know, that's not a great way to be a super connector. And the other thing is always follow up, because the thing is that if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, other people will lose trust in you. So you have to be a follower-upper, okay? If you can't be a super connector, and most people can't, you need to find your super connectors and get them involved in your change project. Get their insights, because they'll have a lot of useful things to say. Engage them in the change, okay? And you know, give them a role in it. You know, go out of your way to talk to them. And stay connected to them for the long haul, because the worst thing you can do is work with some super connectors for a particular project you're working on, and then as soon as your project's over, you ghost them, you know, and then when you want them again, they won't come because you've hurt them. So, you know, super connector relationships are there for the long haul. And, you know, as senior leaders, we may be less influential than we think. And again, you know, some advice here for our Warrington Together colleagues, Carol and Rachel. okay? If we want to get the same level of influence for our projects through top-down change, as we would get understanding who our influences are and working through them, we need 4 times more people. So cascading change through a system, you need 4 times more people to do that than if you work through influencers. Right, I'm going to just stop there really quickly. And can I just get a comment from 1 or 2 of our chat box colleagues? And can I just say to our chat monitors and our Twitter monitors as well, Alana and Eve, just get you to say one quick thing. So chat box monitors, what are what's the kind of feeling in the chat box? What's the spirit? What are people talking about?
There's a lot of, sorry.
You go, Kat. You go.
Yeah, Kathy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of discussion about language and the sort of language that is used around power and how that needs to be addressed. And I think there's an interesting point that the language around power is similar to the language around cancer. And even in our colloquial language, it's how you get on, well, I'm battling through, I'm surviving, that sort of language. We need to sort of think about, how we talk to address the issues of power. I thought that was a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Somebody else?
Yeah, I picked up, as you were putting the slides up, there was a lot of discussion about all power and what that meant. When they put the second, the B up, and people were talking about new power, and it was the gap in between. And I think when the integration and the discussion about working together happened and the relationship building, there was a lot of emphasis around that it's the relationships between old power and new power that's key, not competition between both. And that's coming up now again. It's not about the competition, it's about working together, and often it's a competition between both that stops things.
And it feels like a competition. It does. And particularly when you're somebody that works largely in new power ways, it can feel awful. But in a sense, as change agents, we have to work with both. It's our job, in a sense, to bridge both. Yeah. Anybody else like to say anything?
I was just going to say there's quite a lot of comments about the list A and list B, and are the two mutually exclusive? And actually, is the influence where you're in list B, but you've got a list A role, and how you can use that influence as well to span the two.
Yeah, that's great, and there's some evidence on that, Julie. So people can be the same people in list A and list B, but often they're not. So if you think about it, the ratio that we looked at, which is that your super connectors, who are often the people in list B, okay, they are, they're about typically 3% of a group of an organisational system, and they drive conversations with 85% of other people. And if you think about a lot of the people in list A, typically people in senior leadership roles in an organisation will be around 12% of people. But they're only driving conversations with 55% of other people. So you've got your super connectors, 3%, who are driving conversations with 85% of other people, and you've got your senior leaders, who are 12%, who are driving conversations with only 55% of other people. So yes, people can be in both, and it's great when you can, but typically people aren't. People are typically one or the other. But if you are in both, that's fantastic, I think.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of kind of activity on Twitter, same kind of conversation around the two lists, people saying actually we do need both lists of people to make transformation happen. A lot of people thinking around actually who are the informal influences around us, prompting that question. So yeah, loads of activity, keep it coming through, keep using the hashtag. We've got lots to have a think about.
Great, and I think we'll leave our comments for there, but thanks to Chatbox and Twitter monitors doing a fantastic job, and we'll come back later. So let's think about this, you know, in terms of working in old power and new power ways. This is from Mark Jabin, and Mark Jabin is an emergency physician in Florida in the USA, and he's made it his life's mission to study the neuroscience of resistance to change. And this is one of the models that he uses. And he says, this is what we usually do and what we shouldn't do. Like, we identify an issue. So again, let's go back to our Warrington example, you know, around a big opportunity to work in virtual ways that will be better for patients and staff and the system. So what we then do is we come up with a desired outcome. You know, this is how we want things. This is our vision. I want things to be. And a small group of people will identify some options and we'll make a choice. And when we made a choice, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do. That's when we engage people. Mark Jabin says this is what we do, but what we shouldn't do. And this is what we should do. As soon as we identify an issue or something we want to do, we need to engage people straight away so that the desired outcome, okay, is a shared outcome, and the options are shared options, and the choices are shared options. And he says, you know, Mark Jabin says we should ban the term buy-in. You know, like very often we have this conversation, oh, we want to do this change, but we've got to get the doctors to buy in to change. Okay, wrong way of thinking about it. You know, we don't want buyers who buy into change when we've already made decisions. We need investors. So again, let's think about this in terms of our Warrington project, okay, about how do we involve investors at an early stage. I'm just going to leave this bit and I want to go on and talk about shared purpose, okay. One of the things I think it's so important to think about in a project, okay, particularly at the early stage, is around how we create a shared purpose. And a shared purpose, okay, it goes way deeper than vision or mission. Here's this quote from Seth Cogbillio, okay. It goes right into your gut and it taps some part of your primal self. So if we want to engage people in change, okay, we need to do it in a new power way around like what matters to me. And Seth Cogbillio says, if you can bring people with similar primal purposes together and get them all marching in the same direction, amazing things can be achieved. Okay, so like my challenge to Rachel and Carol is, what's our shared purpose around the virtual project? And you know, anytime we're doing any kind of work around improvement and making improvement happen, we need to anchor it in purpose. So, you know, when we're at the early stage of a project and we're thinking about, you know, how can we make things happen, okay? In improvement methodology, our first question will be, what's our aim? I mean, how many of you use this model? I use it all the time, you know, the model for improvement. And you know, this has been around for about 20 years, and that if we're going to have a project, we start with an aim, what are we trying to accomplish? We then have measures, how we know if the change is an improvement, we need to measure it. And then the third is, what changes can we make that will result in an improvement? And they're really good questions, okay? But if we start with aim, we're doing buy-in and not investment. So if actually we're starting from a place of social movements or community organising, we have to start from a different place, okay, which is, who are our people, okay, and then the next bit is you know, what unites us, okay, what's our shared purpose, and only then do we think, what is our aim. So one of the people that influences me most in the whole world is Marshall Gans. And Marshall Gans was an activist in the US civil rights movement in the 1960s, and now he is a professor at Harvard. And you know, he says, if we're looking at this from a social movement or a community organising perspective, the first question a community organiser will ask in a project is, who are my people, okay? And it's a different question to the question that we typically ask when we're doing change in the health and care system. What's our issue that we're trying to address here? Okay. And again, you know, look at what Mark Jabin said before. We always start with an issue. Okay. And what we should do is start with, who are my people? Because actually organising and community organising, and actually any change project is community organising. is about enabling the people who've got the problem to mobilise their own resources to solve it and to keep it solved. So in a sense, it's not about coming up with an aim and doing, persuading people to buy into doing something. It's actually about understanding what our starting point is. So instead of having a model for improvement that starts with aim, we need to have a model of improvement which starts with who are our people, who do we need to engage, and what unites us, what's our shared purpose. And it's only when we've done that that we then think about what our aim in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, what our measures are, what the changes are. And I'd say, as a change practitioner, okay, one of the big differences between working in an old power way and a new power way is about putting that step in first. Now, very important, don't confuse purpose with aim. And people do this all the time. And I'm going to get you to do some purposes after the break. And I betcha, okay, I betcha that we're going to come back and we're going to have a go at doing purposes, and they're not going to be purposes, they're going to be aims, okay? So it's kind of inevitable when you start doing this, okay? So what's an aim? Okay, an aim is setting a determined course of action in order to achieve a set goal within a specific timescale, okay? We absolutely need an aim, okay? If we haven't got an aim to our change project and we haven't got a baseline starting point and an aim to change that, it's not going to work as an improvement project. But we have to start a step above that, okay? We have to start with purpose. Like, why are we doing this, and what do we hope to achieve from it? And we absolutely need both. But before we do the aims for our project, we need to build a shared purpose. Now, when we don't do a shared purpose, one of the things that happens, and I see this thousands of times happening across the health and care system, because we haven't actually done a collaborative shared purpose with our people, and where we start with an aim, okay, what's happening is, because we haven't said why we're doing this and why this is important and why, and linking it to what matters to you, people will fill that space in with their own space. So what they'll do is they'll hear leaders talking about the aim and what we're trying to do, hitting targets or standard or key performance indicators, reducing costs, reducing time in hospital, either people working in hospitals wanting to reduce length of stay, or people that work in social care or community, wanting to get people out of the hospital who have got a delayed transfer of care, complying with regulators, completing activities within a timescale or budget. Okay, if we've got a project or we're a leader, and all we're talking to people about are these kinds of things, and we haven't talked about this bigger purpose that connects at a deeper level, okay? If we haven't made a purpose that's explicit and shared, then in other people's mind, our purpose will become a de facto purpose. And de facto means, even if that wasn't our intention with the change project, even though that wasn't meant to be in our aim, that's the reality of what it's become. And if people replace a shared purpose with a de facto purpose, it can be toxic, it can lead to burnout, and it can block engagement. So it's really important, if we want to work in new power ways, that we start with our shared purpose. And again, think about what we're trying to do here. Are we, role modeling our inner Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with I Have a Dream? Or are we saying, I've got some key performance indicators for the next 12 months? We have to start with the I have a dream. And you know what? Again, the evidence tells us really clearly, if we actually start with the bigger purpose, with a shared purpose, it's much easier to get compliance with key performance indicators because people understand why we're doing them. So what we need to think about is our shared purpose. I need to think about three things. Who are the people who are going to be impacted by the change, and who will need to be part of the change? So we need to think about the hour and list the hour. Then we need to think about the shared, what unites us. I got you to do a little activity in the breakout rooms earlier around, the things that unite us, okay? Unless we can find things that unite us as a group, we're not going to move forward. And then purpose. Why are we taking action? How are we framing the change in a way to link in with things that really matter with us? And what we're going to do after we have our little break is we're going to look at the Warrington Together case study, and collectively we're going to create an our shared purpose for that project. I'll just give an example one. This is hashtag #EndPJ Paralysis, which is a project around mobilising people that get stuck in hospital beds when they should be being mobilised, they should be putting their clothes on, and they should be getting out and about. So who are the hour? Okay, so first of all, we do a list of all the people that that need to be part of the change. Then what unites us? Okay, and again, we're framing this in a way around what really matters to us. Actually, what unites us is we're a really wide group of people, but what we share is our anger and outrage at older patients deteriorating when we've got the power to do something about it. Okay, so what's our purpose? Our purpose is to make sure that everyone who is in a hospital bed everywhere gets mobilised when they're ready, both clinically and personally ready, and that every person gets choice and chance for the future life they want. So #PJ Paralysis isn't just about saving money and making good use of resources by getting people out of bed. It's a social justice project. Every week that somebody aged over 80 spends in a hospital bed, can lead to muscle deterioration and the equivalent of 10 years worth of it. And it can make the difference between somebody being able to be independent to get the choice they want to go back to their own home, or having to go into a nursing home. So do you see how we're framing purpose here around connecting with the things that really matter to us? Then the final thing I just want to show you that we're going to do as a gift to Rachel and Carol after the break is our approach to change. Okay, this actually comes from my organisation, NHS England and Improvement, and it's very helpful with a group of people to co-create what our approach to change is going to be. What's our starting point? What strategies, action are we going to take? What's the impact and what's the future? So I'll just describe this really quickly. Okay, our starting point is that my organisation has demonstrated new and flexible ways of working in its COVID response, and we want to move forward with the new ways. We don't want to go back to the old ways. Right, what's our strategies? Okay, so what's our high level thinking about the kinds of things that we have to do to enable that? So we want to change the discussion that shapes our everyday thinking and behaviour. We just heard before, the language around power, okay? We want to change the discussion, we want to have different language. We want to engage our whole organisation, and we want to rewrite the rules that govern how things operate, okay? That's our strategy around the way we're going to do this. So what are our specific actions? We're going to create a big conversation getting people to talk to each other around our whole organisation around 3 questions, and I've put those questions at the side. So what's happening at the moment in my organisation, hundreds of people have been randomly matched from across the organisation, and they're having conversations with each other about my COVID experience, okay? And what we're doing, we're not just doing a diagnostic where we analyse all the data that comes out of these conversations and we design some work streams. Just the fact that we've got different people from across our organisation having conversations with each other across boundaries, that's actually part of the change. It's transformational conversations, and the conversations themselves actually being part of the change. And what do we want our impact to be? We want new connections, we want collaboration, we want energy for change. And even though we want people to feel autonomous in terms of being able to do the job you want to do, we're actually more aligned and joined up across our organisation. And what's our future vision? Ways of working that are agile, flexible, responsive, and adding values in ways that achieve our goals for our patients, for our population, and our people. Okay, so actually setting this out, okay, co-created with a group of our people is a very helpful thing to do. So the other thing we're going to do after the break is we're going to collectively create one of these for Carol and Rachel and our virtual project for Warrington Together. So I make it time to have a cup of tea now. can we come back, everybody, at 10:05? Okay, so sorry, at 11:05. So can we be ready to go at 11:05? And what we're going to do then is we're going to hear about the project from Carol and Rachel, and we're going to go into our groups again to work through some of these questions in a practical way. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Is everybody happy about that? Okay, and we'll start again at 11:05. So is everybody ready and happy to get going on the second part of our session today? Yeah, great. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Rachel and Carol, and they're going to set the scene for our practical case study around using some of these ideas. So, hi, Rachel and Carol. Can you you can see me and hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. You sound great. So, okay. Tell us about Warrington Together, and tell us about your project.
Okay, so morning everybody. I'm Carol Hugel. I'm Clinical Director with Warrington Together.
And I'm Rachel Miller. I'm Programmer for Warrington
Together. Yeah, Rachel, you need to come a bit nearer. Great. Yeah, much better. Brilliant.
Okay, so just a little bit about Warrington Together and Warrington, just to set some context. Warrington's got a population of about 207,000 people. For those of you that are not familiar with Warrington, I'm sure most are, but it's between Manchester and Liverpool. It's actually in the top, it's a growing town, and it's actually in the top decile for economic prosperity and also educational attainment. We do, however, have a significant issue around deprivation versus affluence. We describe Warrington in that regard as a donut, where the inner ring of the donut, it has some of the most deprived areas in the country, and the outer area of the donut has some of the most affluent. So what we have in Warrington is a 12-year difference in life expectancy between that most affluent and most deprived areas of the town. So that's kind of one of our biggest challenges. So Warrington Together was formed 3 years ago, and it's the integrated care partnership in Warrington between all the statutory health organisations, the council, particularly social care, the third sector, housing. So we have a partnership, we have a board which actually reports to the Health and Wellbeing Board, and the overall purpose really of the partnership is to promote an asset-based approach, a population health model in Warrington, to really ensure that our population can be the most healthy, happy, and have the best well-being possible. So that's our overall purpose. We have a number of work streams under that banner. One of those is the integrated community teams work, which I'm sure a lot of other systems are also working on. And that was a work stream focused on delivering integrated care, particularly for our vulnerable, frail population, and delivering that integrated care closer to home to ensure that we can keep those people living in their home environments as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And part of that was developing co-located health and social care and wellbeing teams working together in one location. And actually, just, I know, Helen, you talked about PDSA before. That's the method we have employed during this this programme, is really to use that PDSA approach.
Fantastic. Yeah, next. Yeah.
So one of the things that's happened as a result of COVID, which we were trying to develop prior to COVID, was that we were trying to encourage our integrated teams, so the social care staff, the social workers, the district nurses, the community matrons, the wellbeing staff, the mental health staff, that were based together and co-located, trying to really encourage them to work more in a more agile way and to employ more virtual working. And I'm sure, again, other systems before COVID experienced some challenges doing that. People still wanted to come into the office, they still wanted their own desk, you know, they wanted the pot plant on the desk and the photos, family photos, etc. We were all a bit like that. So, but actually what's happened during COVID is that those teams have automatically employed that more agile working, and they've used technology to dial in, have virtual handovers, you know, and that sometimes is from the car, or they've worked, they've started their day. Obviously the nature of the people that we're talking about is that they are out and about in the community, so they can't work from home per se, but they can conduct handovers and meetings from home. And they're coming into the office occasionally for that contact and supervision, professional supervision, for example. So that's been a result of COVID, which has been really good. But what we are looking to do is build on that. So we had also developed multidisciplinary teams, which were wider than the integrated care teams. So we'd have representation from, as well as the district nurses, social workers, mental health, wellbeing, primary care, so the GPs, housing, and some third sector representation. And those teams met physically in one location. They all came together. You can imagine it's quite a number of people, and it was quite challenging because one of the things that was challenging was particularly getting primary care representation, getting the GPs there on a consistent basis, and you know, you can imagine why. And we had wanted to develop again a more virtual way of doing that to solve that problem. And one of the problems that we do have, or one of the challenges that we do have in Warrington, is that the primary care networks, sorry for those people that aren't familiar, PCN is primary care network, so a group of GP practices. They're not all geographically aligned, so travel and organising those meetings, etc., is more challenging. So, however, to our benefit now, again due to COVID, as everybody I'm sure knows, primary care are now doing more virtual consultations, and they're using technology much more comfortably. And we know that in Warrington, virtually all of our GPs and practices are very keen to continue to do that. So that's a plus for us in terms of trying to work in a more virtual way. So the multidisciplinary meetings, just to say, they were actually suspended during COVID, as you can imagine, because everybody coming together like that wasn't feasible. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So you asked us for some aims, and these, you know, we kept them kind of simple, really, that we want to reinstate those MDTs, but we want to hold them virtually by August. And you'll all know there's still a challenge there, because you know, we are still dealing with COVID, and there is some unknowns about how that is going to go over the next few months. We wanted to ensure that a nominated GPs in attendance at 80% of those meetings, and that in fact all professionals attend 80% of the meetings, that we reduce travel time completely, which for those of you who aren't familiar with Warrington, the traffic is an absolute nightmare. It's not that large a town, but getting across town sometimes can be an hour in traffic. So that's a huge plus, and also reducing travel costs. We also wanted to ask everybody to think about some key questions. So we recognise that holding, although we'll have some advantages if we described as holding the MDTs virtually, how to ensure that patient care is not compromised, because as I think you said before, there are some advantages of people seeing each other face to face. You know, there are things that crop up either before meetings or after meetings that people sit and chat about. People can bounce ideas off each other. So how do we not lose that face to face, the advantage of people sitting and having that time face to face? How can we measure our success? Always a challenge. And how can, again, going back to the face-to-face issue, how do we make sure, because again, as you've said, Helen, a lot of this, the success of this work is about relationships, trust, relationships. It is a bit harder when you're on a Zoom meeting and that's the only contact you have with people to maintain those relationships. So how do we do that? And how can we encourage that continuous cycle of innovation, which again has happened because people have come together, they've had the time and the space perhaps to explore how we continue to innovate and develop that together. So those are some questions that we thought might be useful for people to consider.
Great.
So that's a quick
a canter through. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for doing this. And do you know what I'm going to do? I know loads of people have got lots of questions for you, but I'm quite keen that we, you know, we go into our groups and we start doing some work together. You know, so what we're going to do, how we're going to do this is we're going to think about, you know, the virtual MDT project that Carol and Rachel have just shown us. And what we want to do is we want to help them by creating an hour shared purpose statement, okay? So how I'm proposing we're going to do this is, do you remember I said to you, can you keep your group number from before? If you're in group 1 to 7, you are going to identify who needs to be in the hour list. Okay, and again, we might not all be intimately knowledgeable with exactly what happens in terms of MDTs in Warrington, but you know, I think we had quite a lot of clues from what Carol and Rachel just said to us. So anybody who's going to be impacted by the change really ought to be part of it. So who are the investors? Okay, and then what's going to happen is that groups 8 to 13 are going to write a sentence for shared. So, you know, you'll have to assume who the hours are, okay? But, you know, what unites all those people, okay? What really matters to them that they want to be part of that project? And then if you're in group 14 to 20, you've got to come up with a purpose. So, like, why collectively are we taking action to move to virtual? And how does virtual and this new way of working connect with the things that really matter to us? Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to move you all now into a small group. So remember which group you're in. Just to say, we've lost a few people. So if your group becomes really small, either choose to have a small group, and that's fine. You know, if 2 of you are motivated to do this together, that's fine. Or if you want to join a bigger group, if you leave the breakout room and come back to us in the main room, we'll put you in another group, okay? So remember what group number you are, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes, go in your group. If you're group 1 to 7, come up with the list of the hour. If you're group 8 to 13, okay, thinking, you know, come up with the purpose of all the people, come up with what unites us in the same way you did earlier when we went in we said what unites us all, okay, but in the context of this project. And then if you are 14 to 20, then try and come up with a purpose statement. So you've got 10 minutes, okay, to come back with your mission. Everybody clear about that? Can you identify someone in your group who will write your response in the chat box when we get back? So as soon as you get in the group, agree who's going to put it in the chat box when we get back. And again, don't put it in the chat box in the breakout room because we will lose it. So, Belle and Paul, are we ready to move everybody back into their groups?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, over to you.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
How are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Fiona?
Yeah. Fiona, I know. Hi, Fiona. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Great. So is everybody else coming back now?
We've got 87 people back with us so far.
Okay, great. So, when you're coming back, what we'd like you to do, welcome back everybody, can one person from your room write your outputs in the chat box? But I want you to write them in the chat box, but don't press the return key to send it, okay, until I tell you to. So can you write them in the chat box, but not send them? And I just want to give warning as well to the chat box facilitators that I'm going to ask you to summarise what we're seeing. Okay, so if you can put them in the chat box, but don't press the key. Great. So is everybody who's in group 1 to 7, actually you've got the hardest job because you've got to write more. So chat box monitors, does it look as though we've got enough content to be able to see it? Nobody else still don't send them yet. Don't press the return key. Chat box monitors, do you think we're ready?
I'm also typing, so I'll be nearly ready.
Yeah, okay, great. So what's going to happen is, Julie, I'm going to give you the job with number 1. So what I want, if you were in groups 1 to 7, only groups 1 to 7, okay, that did the hour, I would like you to press your return key and send them now. So let's see what we got for and then Julie, I want you to tell us what are we seeing for the hour. So just groups 1 to 7. What are we seeing?
I'm just trying to read through because there's a lot. So I think I'm just trying to see if anybody's got anything different in our group put, but I think there's lots of things around, having the residents, the people involved, so the people who'd be this change being involved, and then someone's also put like the wider, police, home carers, social prescribers. Again, sort of like IT. Oh, sorry, I've gone put mine in the private one instead of to everybody. So our group talked about, it's different skill sets, so training and everything's needed as well. Yeah. And so, voluntary sector more, and community sector more explicit in this work.
Yeah, we hear that. And what we're going to do is we're going to give this to Rachel and Carol as a gift. So that's fantastic. So the next set that we've got is about shared. So what unites us? So can I give notice to Pam? I'm going to get you to read these. So if you were in groups 8 to 13 and you did shared, will you press your button, your return key now, so we can see what you came up with in terms of shared. And then Pam, when you're ready, can you reflect on it?
Okay, I'll start with the group I was in. I think we came to a pretty good conclusion. What unites us is uniformity of care with shared and agreed outcomes that are appropriate and best suited for the patients involved. Group 10, thoughts on purpose, keeping people safe, using technology.
Yeah, we don't want purpose. We don't want purpose. We just want shared. So we only want to see see groups 8 to 13 that are shared.
All right. Oh, somebody's said the wrong one.
Yeah, we don't take any notice of those for the moment.
anytime, any place, anywhere, we provide the same care.
Yeah.
A desire to reduce the socially unjust gap in health equalities and work with the people to be as healthy and happy as possible through working together for our communities and citizens. Group 10 is shared, so keeping people safe, using technology to improve people's health, using technology to harness and improve, rather than just as a necessity, concern around digital poverty and the need to address health inequalities.
Lovely. So can I tell you what I like about these? I just think, you know, you're really getting it. And you know, the way in which you're framing the shared, you know, the shared bit of the shared purpose, what unites us back to health inequalities, you know, back to social injustice, and back to you know, people's experience and people's lives, and technology being a transformational enabler of that. That's it's so important that we do that, because then doing this project, it isn't like, you know, this is about being more efficient. It's actually, you know, it's connecting back to a deeper thing. So I think really good work there. So shall we, so Sue, will you look at the, will you feedback on the purpose group? So if you were in the purpose group, if you were in 14 to 20, can you send it now? And if you were in 14 to 20 and you sent it before by mistake, can you like copy it and send it again? And then Sue, can you have a look at these?
Yeah, okay, so there's something about being inclusive of people, combining their expertise. That sounds like it's really important. Coming together to put the individual and family at the centre in solving complex problems around holistic care, creating opportunities to have joined up conversations, and working on what works well and consolidating, embedding this going forward in the new normal. Sorry, bear with me. Yeah, joined up conversations, building on collective expertise to deliver the best care for patients. So really the theme is about everybody coming together, with the patient being at the and the family being at the centre, and solving the complex problems together, improving health and well-being while safeguarding as well. Reducing waste in time, travel, emissions, and efficiently using time effectively, and increasing collaboration between people, embracing new ways of working with tangible economic benefits.
Great. I think really, really good work. And, you know, some things I'd say is, you know, very often when we're talking around projects which are around making things virtual, we focus on the how and the what, and we just don't focus enough on the why. So I think, you know, relating this back, and some of you did it there, I think really nicely, you know, about the, this isn't about a technical advancement, a project for technical, this is about a project for enabling relationships, to do things that matter for you know, a bigger group of people. And I just felt, you know, when I listened in to some of those, you know, some of the things that you were feeding back there, it connected in my heart. And you know, what we've got to bear in mind, when I went to improvement school, which was like a long time ago, in the NHS, you know, what I got taught was that if you want to engage a medical doctor in change, you've got to show them a graph, because medical doctors will only be persuaded to change by when we show them data and evidence. And you know, it's not true. A medical doctor is far more likely to connect with change because we connect at a level of emotion through values. You know, of course we need data, of course, you know, and of course we need an aim. I think, but you know, we have to start from a place of shared purpose. I saw a few aims creeping in there. You know, like you know, sometimes if we talk about you know, like reducing waste, to me is probably more of an aim, because it's not, you know, it's not a it's you know, our purpose is to do, you know, is to, you know, is at a kind of higher level than that. I think though that, you know, some of the issues around saving the planet and sustainability, I think, are really important at the purpose level. But it's just worth thinking about. And again, you know, what we'll do for Carol and for Rachel is we'll give you the gift of all of this, and you know, you can work it up some more. And again, you know, to give it a really strong Warrington flavour, and you know, people of Warrington and what we want for the people of Warrington. I think we're really good. But I think you did great. Now we were going to, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to stick with one breakout, because we need to finish at 11:45. But I think we did really well there. But again, you know, this approach to change is a very, very helpful thing to do, and we haven't got time to do it today. But you know, it's something that you might want to think about doing. And you know, if we are going to do this, what we do is I would do the starting point. And the future, and I put those at either end. And then I'd work through the strategies, the action, and the impact. And it's really worth doing this, thinking around, this is our starting point, you know, again, thinking about this in the context of Warrington Together. You know, we've been able to work virtually, but there's so much more opportunity. And then do a future statement of how we want it to be, and what's our strategy around how we're going to get to that future. Okay. What actions are we going to take, and what impact do we want it to have? And I'd also frame this both in old power and new power ways, but we haven't got time to do that now. So what we have got time to do is I would like Rachel and Carol just to get, you know, just having had that experience and seeing what people have put, to get some feedback from you. And I also want to give notice to Vicky, who is our fourth chat box monitor. I want you to just to summarise the chat box, if that's okay. Alana and Eve would like one of you to summarise the Twitter, and then we're going to hand over to Helen to close. So let's do things in that order. So first of all, let's hear from Carol and Rachel. How was that for you?
It's really helpful, and it's been great to get a lot of feedback from people. I think one of the main things that I can see, especially from the chat boxes, is people talking about patient participation, and that is something that previously when we met face to face, we weren't actually able to involve patients, because it would have been really difficult. We were talking about multiple patients in one room, so it was something that I think we just felt that was, while we'd like to have done it, it was really difficult. So I think it's given us a little bit of something to think about as how that we can improve on what we used to do, really. So by holding these meetings virtually, we will be able to incorporate that patient voice in it in a stronger way. So I think that's probably one key thing that's shone out for me, really.
Yeah, and just to echo Rachel, it's been really useful to hear both in the breakout room people's thoughts, but also we've been watching the questions and points come up on the chat, and it does really make you think about things we haven't thought about, or challenge our thinking, which is always good. There was one question I just wanted to kind of respond to. George Ogden, who I think's a GP, sort of made a comment about, you know, why didn't we think GPs wanted to be involved? And I just wanted to make clear that what we didn't want to indicate was that GPs didn't want to be involved. That wasn't the case. It was just the difficulties around and the challenges around them being involved, and the way that we weren't using technology, really. So that's just a point of clarification. I didn't want to insinuate they weren't enthusiastic, because they were. And of course, we had to summarise everything in quite a short time. We could both talk for hours. Yeah. So, but overall, thank you everybody. Some really, and obviously, I know hopefully we'll get the chat comments from you later, and we can have a good look through them. But some really good, useful points and feedback.
And thank you for coming and volunteering to do this today. This has been so much better because we've had you. and we've been able to focus on you.
It's a pleasure.
And,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, brilliant. And Vicky, a quick summary of the kind of spirit of the chat box.
Yeah, so there's thank yous and just for the session, and lots of reflections in terms of what you just said there around patient involvement and purpose. There's also people recommended resources, which I'm going to drop a couple in there as well. I think it'd be good if we could share if there's something that people have connected with, or there's something where there was some reading that you thought would be useful for others to read. Please drop them into the chat box. And just thinking about it, and just in summary, from my breakout room, someone mentioned that it would be criminal if we didn't learn from this, if we didn't take this opportunity to learn from what's happened and what we've been almost forced into. And I'd just like to thank you for that. I think this has been a really good opportunity to catapult us into that and not lose this chance that we've been given. We must try and take some positives from that. And just something from Rosanna at the start around how language creates the reality we perceive. That's something that stuck with me, that you posted right at the start. And it is, you know, when you talk about metaphors, how we have a lot of control over how we perceive this and how we take it forward.
Great, that's lovely, energising way to nearly finish. Thank you, Vicky, so much. And Alana Eve, is one of you going to tell us about Twitter? What's been happening in the Twitter sphere?
Yeah, again, really engaging. Everybody's been really enthralled with the session, and lots of thank yous again. Lots of people got a few thoughts on the purpose and thinking about individual and collective purpose and how we can define that difference between the aim and the purpose of what we're doing. Yeah, really powerful thoughts. Lots of people thinking about what unites us and how we can really embrace the power for change using old and new.
Yeah, great. And it's both, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for doing such a great job, Eve and Alana. So, Helen, I think we come to you finally. So, conclude for us.
Yeah, how to conclude that? Wow. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Helen and Carol and Rachel, and particularly the people behind the scenes who've made this work as well. So we've had various people online with the chat box facility, but also a lot of work goes into the planning of this. So we have a group who do that. I was really struck when I went into my group that my starting gambit was everyone needs a shot of Helen regularly, because some of this stuff is not new to us, but actually quite often the day job drags us back into the old world and doesn't give us that balance we want of that old and new power. I was really struck about super connectors as well, and how we maximise those while we're working virtually, because I think they're going to help us go further and faster. And I really liked that our shared purpose as well. I think that's a really simple tool that you could get people around to actually mobilise people. And I suppose my final thought was the starting point. So you reminded me, Helen, of my degree when I did some philosophy. So that, you know, that quote from Bertrand Russell, power is the ability to produce intended effect. Can we assure ourselves, and we are sure that we're always using power to cause that intended effect we want? And I think that will stick with me, that we need to use the power we've got in the right way, both the informal and the formal. So thank you for everyone. Thank you for engaging virtually. It's the first time we've done a masterclass in this way. I know Helen and her team are very skilled, but it's been great to be able to engage with you. So thank you on behalf of all the North West partners, and thank you again, Helen, for your time.
It's a pleasure, and you know, and just to thank everybody who's part of this today, because you know, people here are doing such important jobs at a really hard time. So you know, yeah, we really appreciate, and again, in the same way that Carol and Rachel, you know, are thinking around you know, how do we do our MDTs virtually, you know, I think we have such an opportunity here to connect and collaborate, and you know, and do sessions like this when we just, given all the other things that are going on at the moment, we wouldn't be able to otherwise. So so you know, brilliant contributions today, and here's to more of it.
Great, thank you all.
Yeah, bye then.
Bye.
Bye.